Oh, oh God. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Gavesty here. This is the normal quick raid guide for Kor'kron Dark Shamans. Feel free to click on the annotations if you'd like to see the full raid guide or any other role-specific guides. Otherwise, let's get started. Now, when you initially pull these guys, they will demount and both their mounts or dogs will attack you. The best thing to do really is to focus on the dogs. You can cleave as well, but try to kill the dogs before the bosses reach 85%, because at 85% they'll use their special abilities for the first time, and the dogs add a lot of extra bleed damage to the tanks that you probably don't want to deal with at the same time. Now, both the Shaman do share a health pool, so once they both reach 85%, the totems will begin. And the totems essentially spawn based on the health level of the Shamans. Every time they want to use an ability, if their health level is below a certain threshold, they'll have access to a new type of totem and a new type of ability. And these are additive. So at 85%, they gain one ability, then at 65%, they gain another, and then finally at 50% and below, they'll have all three of their abilities for the rest of the fight. So Earthbreaker Haromm is the easier of the two bosses, and his first ability at 85% applies a toxic debuff to 2 random raid members. This lasts for 30 seconds, deals heavy nature damage every 3 seconds, and this damage is increased by about 10% per tick. So by the end of it, it'll do about 160,000 every 3 seconds. This is mostly a concern for your healers, but players that are afflicted by it should try to use a personal damage reduction cooldown the last 10 seconds or so of the duration, just to help out. The other ability he'll gain at 65% is Foul Stream, and this essentially targets a random raid member. There you can see it targeting me. So you get a huge indicator, and then after about 3 or 4 seconds, a stream of toxic badness will shoot out at the raid member from the boss's location. So this person should do their best to move to the side of the boss so that the straight line attack from the boss won't force anyone else in the raid to move around. Finally, at 50%, Haromm gains his last totem ability, which is Ashen Wall. And this creates a wall of elementals. Just anyone that gets within melee range of the elemental gets attacked. But it's really easy to avoid otherwise. So once those appear, just move away from them slightly. It's mostly up to your tanks to get them out of range of melee and all that stuff. And otherwise, it's a pretty basic ability to deal with. It should be worth noting that the Ashen Wall will disappear after 1 minute of being active. So you can reuse that space that was cut off previously. Now, Wavebinder Kardris is the more dangerous of the two enemies here by far. So her first totem ability at 85% is Toxic Storm. You can see the purple storm cloud there at the top, pretty obvious. This is cast on a random raid member. It seems to prefer players that are somewhat closer to her, if possible. And anyone that touches the cloud takes heavy damage. It also spawns these tornadoes that move slowly around the room. So similar to the cloud, don't touch these or you'll take major damage and be knocked away a little bit. Her 65% ability is Foul Geyser. And this is kind of one of the key mechanics of the fight. Controlling this properly is vital to your success. Essentially, she will spawn a wave, or a series rather, of foul slimes. These spawn at the location of the tank usually that's on her, or someone in melee range. So there you can see the stream of slimes spawning. And there's about 16 in total, I believe. Once they spawn, anyone that gets within 3 yards of a slime will take 100,000 damage per second per slime. So jumping into the center of that group is a quick way to die very fast unless you have an immunity or major cooldown. That said, the best way to deal with them usually is to have one of the tanks try to get threat on them from range or with a ground-based effect. And then once most of them respawn and you have threat, you can AE them down with ranged DPS players. So They're not too bad as long as you look at the timers and kind of know when they're spawning and can deal with them appropriately. And then her final ability is that giant red circle in the center. This is Falling Ash, and it essentially has a long cast time, about 15 seconds of a wind-up. After the 15 seconds, the ash ball falls, hits the center, and does a million damage to anyone still within it. Otherwise, it does about 300,000 to the rest of the raid normally. So, again, use personal or minor raid cooldowns when this is about to hit to reduce the damage. Otherwise, healers should just keep everyone topped off for that period. And that covers really all the basic abilities. The final thing to consider in this fight is your positioning as a raid, as well as the movement of the bosses. The tanks will need to swap the bosses somewhat frequently due to the stacking frost damage debuff from Haromm. Basically, it increases the damage that he deals with his main attack, a special attack. So, for that reason, you either need to keep the bosses on top of each other, or just have the tanks move back and forth with their bosses across the room when it's appropriate. In this video, we kind of kept them separated, but probably next week, I think it would be smarter to keep them close together. So for that reason, I would recommend tanking them near one another if possible, and then just being careful about the slime spawns pretty much. That said, just focus on your positions and avoiding those storms, avoiding the slime trail, and then just controlling those slime spawns when they appear, as well as dodging the tornadoes. So there's a lot of movement. It's kind of chaotic, but if you just pay attention to your position relative to all that stuff, eventually you will get them down. The DPS requirement is not that severe at all. So that is the normal quick raid guide for Kor'kron Dark Shaman. As always, good luck, and thanks for watching.